Hi, I'm delighted to be joined today by Tim and Tanya, and we're going to talk about sustainable supply chains and what that means from a tax perspective. So to kick things off, Tanya, how are business models evolving to deliver more sustainable supply chains?
Well, I could say that one of the main trends that we are seeing happening at the moment is the localization of supply chains. So historically, we have seen businesses implementing very global and complex supply chain, but the zero net emissions goals of many businesses, they have make it much more appealing to implement local supply chains. By local supply chains, we mean local sourcing, local manufacturing of the goods, and local distributors, everything happening closer to the customer. This is, for example, something that is currently happening in the consumer sector. Very often we are seeing this trend being implemented. Another big change that we are seeing many businesses implementing is around taking up circular operating models. So for example, historically, when the product life cycle is complete, we tend to dispose of the goods. But many businesses, they have implemented zero waste pledges, and they have an aim to reduce waste. So at the moment, many businesses, they are looking to design more sustainable products that actually can be reused or repurposed at the end of the product life cycle.
Yeah, and this isn't a flash in the pan. This is really accelerating at the moment. I think we've seen the last couple of years businesses actually putting their money where their mouth has been. I think that's probably helped by other things like geopolitical trends, like the cost of transportation, the cost of energy as well. Everything's pushing in the same direction on both of those, on the circularity and on the localization of supply chains as well.
And what's this all mean from a tax perspective, Tim?
It means lots of things from a tax perspective, as you would imagine. There are direct tax, corporate tax impacts and opportunities, and there's a whole load of indirect tax which Tanya can talk to. I think that's where a lot of the immediate action is actually around indirect tax. But if we take a couple of examples on corporate tax, a lot of companies if they're moving to net zero, or they're, for example, investing in circularity, they're spending a lot of money on new technologies, often innovative technologies that they haven't really spent money on before. And there's an immediate question, particularly if you're doing it for the good of the group, or you're doing it for something that might give you a payback in 20 years' time, as to, well, who pays for that? Just a basic question, who's going to foot the bill? Who in the group's going to foot the bill? And then on the flip side of that, well, who's going to own the IP that you're generating here? It could be that that's valuable IP. There could be incentive regimes, for example, that you could be making use of. So there's quite a lot to think about on the corporate tax side.
Yeah, and indirect tax means supply chain interaction. So for example, one of the recent examples or recent situations we just implemented with a client is they decided to change their supply chain as a consequence of the visibility that they have now of their use of non-recycled plastic. So plastic packaging tax was recently introduced in the UK, and actually by reporting on the tax and getting all this data together, they understood that actually they are using lots of non-recycled plastic. So they decided, for example, in this case, to change the supply chain, and actually this meant also not sourcing in the UK anymore, but sourcing in Europe, which created then a new international supply chain with all the relevant customs and VAT implications. So yeah, small changes can lead to broad tax implications.
Yeah, that's an important point there, that tax policy isn't just a sort of passive viewer of this. Tax policy in certain countries or regions like the EU is taking an active role in looking to change behaviour, because most of these environmental taxes that have been introduced over the last few years, they're not there in order to raise revenue, they're there to encourage changes in behaviour. So essentially what they want multinationals to do is to look to ways to avoid tax through restructuring their supply chains, but in a way which is good for the environment, essentially. So yeah, tax policy itself is sometimes the driver of both the gathering of the data and the changing of the supply chain.
Tax leaders, super busy people, what should they have at the top of their to-do list? Tanya?
For me, the first and must do is engage. So ESG is presenting a very good opportunity for tax leaders to add value, but they need to engage with the business to understand what is the sustainable supply chain transformation journey, what is the broader ESG strategy, to understand where tax can add value. So that would be the kind of the first to do from my perspective, engage.
Yeah, and that would be my first to do as well. Really important. It's not important just for ESG, but for all things the business is doing. If the tax department isn't on top of what the business is up to and what decisions they're making, then it's not really doing its job. So I think that's really critical. I think another one that is often an issue with things like environmental taxes or some of the quasi taxes we get is just being absolutely clear who owns this. So who's responsible for compliance and for making sure that these taxes are paid and that we're gathering the right sort of data as well. Same as you sometimes get with, say, customs duty as well. It needs to belong somewhere, and something new like that, often it's not entirely clear.
For me to conclude, I would say that it's not only about compliance, like ESG, sustainable supply chain, is opening an opportunity for tax to add value to that ESG business transformation. So for example, this very innovative product design that a business is developing at the moment to have a product that actually can be repurposed and reused at the end of the product life cycle, actually is a lot of investment going into it. The business could be leveraging some of the credits, grants or incentives that are available for this type of innovation. So I think there is really an opportunity for tax to add value to this ESG journey of businesses, and is beautiful and purposeful to do so.
Thank you both very much for joining me. It's lovely to hear it's a real opportunity for tax to add value, but the need to engage early and understand the business. Thank you both.